Here we go again. Here we go again. I mean, believe it or not, I was actually going to come on here this morning, first video of the week, and compliment the young women in women's college basketball. I watched most of the second half of the national championship yesterday afternoon. I couldn't catch the first half. We had a family thing yesterday, which is also the reason I was off from here on YouTube. Now, even though I still believe there is no comparison between men and women's basketball, I'm talking both the NBA, WNBA level and at the college level, even with that being the case, I thought the game yesterday was entertaining enough. Most of the entertainment came from all the trash talking. The game was pretty much over by the time I turned it on. Now, this might be the first time ever where a lot of people are saying the women's tournament was better this year than the men's tournament. I think one of the main reasons for that is most of the teams that draw ratings for the men, they were bounced from the tournament early. Underdogs like FAU, Princeton, those upset victories, they're great stories in the first round, maybe even the second round, but once you get into the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, the Final Four, most people want to see your traditional powerhouse teams competing for the national championship. But the point is, there are so many positive stories with the women that the media could be choosing to focus on. There are so many positives the media could use to grow women's college basketball. I mean, that's been their main stated goal, right? For the last, 3 years, the media has been begging us to give women a chance. Well, we have given women a chance. And to their credit, most of the young women did not disappoint. Keyword, most. We'll get into that more here in just a second. Once again, the mainstream media is doing their best to ruin something. Once again, they are exploiting a marginalized group that they have successfully built up. They are destroying the foundation they built by twisting the narrative into a classic, mythical racism. Now, this is not all the mainstream media's fault. Angel Reese from LSU, she set them up perfectly in her post-game press conference. The woke boner words escaping her facial orifice caused shitfucks like Jay Williams and Stephen A. Smith to hit the dual climax. ESPN ran out of towels trying to clean up the mess. Throughout the game yesterday, which LSU completely dominated the Iowa Katy Roos, Angel Reese, she was talking shit. She was taunting Caitlin Clark. She was doing the "you can't see me" that John Cena used to do in WWE. She was pointing to her ring finger, talking about she was about to win the national title. Now, for some reason, all this taunting from Angel Reese, it offended the easily offended on Twitter. Keith Olbermann called her an idiot when he was accused of mythical racism and mythical misogyny. He tried defending himself by saying, this has nothing to do with race and gender. Oh, wow. Well, that's rather interesting coming from Keith Olbermann. It's strange how the tune of a shitfuck changes when they're the ones being falsely accused. Dave Portnoy, he was outraged at the classless taunting from Angel Reese. Which is fine, that's fine. Both Keith Olbermann and Dave Portnoy, they're allowed to express their opinion. Now, me personally, I had absolutely no problem with anything Angel Reese was doing. Caitlin Clark, she's been doing the same thing throughout the tournament. My problem comes in when the mainstream media tries to twist this situation into a case of mythical racism. First, let's start with the birthing person responsible for supplying the media with the lube to start this session of wanker spanking, Angel Reese. I have still yet to figure out why it is so appealing to be the victim. Angel Reese is coming off a dominating performance, arguably in the biggest and most watched game in the history of women's college basketball. She just won the national championship. What is the first thing she does to start the celebration? She paints the narrative that she is the victim. In her post-game press conference, Angel Reese brought up the supposed backlash she was receiving from emotional Twitter. Watch it for yourself.
All year, I was critiqued about who I was. Nobody, the narrative, I don't fit the narrative. I don't fit in the box that y'all want me to be in. I'm too hood, I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year. But when other people do it, y'all don't say nothing.
First of all, Who has been criticizing Angel Reese and LSU over the last 6 months for being too hood? Who has criticized Angel Reese for being too ghetto? 3 weeks ago, the vast majority of people, we had never heard of Angel Reese. I hadn't heard of her until yesterday afternoon. Now look, that doesn't mean what she's saying is not true. I don't follow women's college basketball, but I dug through media archives this morning, trying to find an example of Angel Reese being called hood or being called ghetto. Just once, one example over the last 5 months. Imagine my surprise when I couldn't find anything. To be honest with you, I think Angel Reese is playing off the comments and the narrative that was created the other day by Dawn Staley. The same narrative Dawn Staley said was dangerous, and it's the same narrative Dawn Staley created. Number two, what is this other narrative that Angel Reese is talking about? What the hell is she talking about, period? Going off her comments, I'm assuming this other narrative is basketball is dominated by trash-talking white players. When those white players are taunting, people don't have a problem with it. But when a young black woman does the same thing, it's a problem. Last I checked, basketball was dominated by black players. So I'm confused as to what narrative Angel Reese is talking about. The only narrative I have seen this morning is Angel Reese is a victim of mythical racism. You know, you knew. You just knew. ESPN was going to exploit these comments from Angel Reese and turn her into the ultimate victim. Angel Reese, she already turned herself into a victim. ESPN's now making her the ultimate victim. Stephen A. Smith was watching that press conference last night, wanker in hand. He invited Max Kellerman out of the woke dungeon. He knows Max is a well-prepared wanker spanker. Max always supplies the preparation H, the cure-all for the woke hangover. After Max Kellerman properly satisfied the needs of Stephen A., he directed his woke love towards Jay Williams. Now, the situation with Jay Williams, it was a little bit different. Stephen A. Smith, he was ready for the woke love. Willie J, though, he was a little bit more emotional. He was upset. Oh, Max, I am full of fake outrage. It pains me to see an angel demonized by the white devil. Earlier this morning, Jay Williams got behind the pulpit at Woke United Methodist to deliver a sermon to his non-existent audience on ESPN Radio. Well, KC, I didn't know ESPN Radio was still available. Yeah. Most people don't. Jay Williams accused Keith Olbermann and Dave Portnoy of applying race towards their criticism of Angel Reese, which is incredibly ironic since neither one of those dudes ever mentioned race, not once. The only person applying race here is Jay Williams. Watch for yourself.
Was it maybe a tad bit excessive? Could she have been called a T? Sure, if the refs wanted to call her a T at the end of the game for trash talking because she fouled Caitlin Clark around. But these are the same things that motivates young people in sports. And we applaud it in other directions, but now we want to apply race towards it, or we want to apply, look at her, she's a classless piece of. That's what Dave Portnoy said. I'm putting names on it. Keith Olbermann called her a blanking idiot on Twitter. What are we doing? Why are we taking it to that level?
Since when is calling someone a classless piece of shit an example of mythical racism? Just because someone is criticizing the behavior, keyword behavior, just because they are criticizing the behavior of Angel Reese, it doesn't mean there is some deep-suited racial issue here. The mainstream media is trying to create this atmosphere where it is unacceptable to criticize anyone who chooses to identify with a marginalized group. Tim Tebow was criticized for years. There were some in the media who criticized Tim Tebow over his religion. I don't remember Tim Tebow ever making himself the victim. I don't remember hearing cries of mythical racism when Stephen A. Smith constantly criticized Tim Tebow, and rightfully so, because it wasn't a racial issue. But when Angel Reese is criticized, she is the victim of a society who doesn't like her because of her skin color. Speaking of Stephen A., as expected, he took this easy opportunity to display his skills of exploitation. The highest paid parrot at ESPN. He claimed this is a white-black issue. Listen to him explain.
We all know that there's a white-black issue here because the fact of the matter is when Caitlin did it, people were celebrating it and they were talking about nothing but her greatness. But then the second the sister stepped up and threw it back in her face, now you got half the basketball world saying, well, you know what, that's not the classiest thing to do. Yeah. That's not the way.
It was the exact same thing.
It was the exact same thing. Now, you can make an argument that if they're doing excessive celebration in her face after the game is over, all right, then you can make that argument.
Like I said earlier, I think all of this was started by Dawn Staley. If I didn't know any better, I would think this was all a setup. It's like this played out perfectly for deacons at Woke United Methodist. Dawn Staley loses to the lacking melanins. She makes herself and her team the victim of mythical racism. 48 hours later, Angel Reese dominates the lacking melanins and is criticized for her over-the-top taunting, giving the media plenty of ammunition for a classic case of the great myth. This is not a black and white issue. Just because Angel Reese is criticized doesn't mean it's a racial issue. Conor McGregor, he has been criticized for years over his antics, over his trash talking, over his taunting. Leading up to the fight against Floyd Mayweather, what was that, 2017? The mainstream media absolutely crucified Conor McGregor. I don't remember hearing complaints of mythical racism back then. I actually feel bad for women's college basketball. I feel bad for Angel Reese because, to be honest with you, I don't think the criticism that she is receiving is justified. I don't think she did anything wrong yesterday. At the same time, I don't think the criticism has anything to do with her race. I feel bad for Caitlin Clark. I feel bad for all these young women, except for Dawn Staley, who started all this bullshit. The reason I feel bad, these young women are coming off a record-setting tournament. The eyes of America were on them for probably the first time. The tournament was entertaining. There was controversy, some good, some bad. But the only thing the media is talking about this morning is the great myth. The reason I feel bad for these young women is because we have seen how the media promotion of the great myth turns most people off. It absolutely destroyed the NBA to the point where the NBA still hasn't recovered. With women's college basketball, the mainstream media, they are attempting to destroy what they helped build. America has finally given these young women a chance, and the media completely ruins it all to further some doofus narrative that doesn't exist. Angel Reese should not be criticized for taunting or trash talking. She should be criticized for turning herself into the victim, pouring gasoline on the woke fire. The media is exploiting women's basketball. Going into the game yesterday, you know what one of the biggest stories was? LSU head coach Kim Mulkey not reaching out to Bob Greiner. Who cares? The New York Times called Kim Mulkey a divisive coach. She refused to support Bobby, the man who helped her win a national title at Baylor. These people are relentless. They will exploit anything to further their own narrative. We're going to see what happens. We will see if this has a negative impact on women's college basketball. But give me your thoughts. Angel Reese gives the media the perfect setup, and they do what they do best, exploiting something that should be nothing. Do you believe Angel Reese is the victim? You let me know. Sound off in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe. Click the notification bell to receive all notifications from the channel. Best way to contact me is by email at btlkc84@gmail.com, kc_btl84 on Twitter. I'll see you guys later.